In this video clip, we will add new compounds to the project species database. So with SysCAD open, but all the projects closed, we'll go to Edit, Project Configuration. If your project configuration is not listed in the dialog box, please click on the Browse button and browse to the required file. In this case, we are using the SysCAD tutorial configuration file that we set up in section 2. So make sure that that configuration is highlighted, and then click on the Species DB button, which stands for Species Database. When we click on that, the Species Database Edit dialog window is now visible. All the species that are in the Species Database are shown here on the left-hand side. And if I click, you can see the full list as I go down. However, not all of these species that are shown here are included in the project. Only those species with a tick are actually in the project. The reason that the database has more species than the project does is so that SysCAD users can have a single database with all of their species, and then they may select different species for different projects. If you require information about any of the fields shown here in the species database, then the help file is quite comprehensive. So if in the help file, if we open the help file, and in the search button, if you type in species table and click on enter, you'll come to the species table, and this will describe all of the fields. For instance, if I click on thermodynamic data and I look at the heat capacity field, this will describe how SysCAD uses the data in the species database and the different forms of the equations. So if I go down to there, you'll see the CRC equation alternative 1 format, and all of the others. So these are all available in the help file. Back into SysCAD. So what we're going to do is we will go and import a species, calcium sulfate solid, from the default SysCAD database. Now you can import species either from a SysCAD database, the default database, or any other database, or you may import from the HSC database if you own it. In this case, we'll import from SysCAD. So if I click on the SysCAD database button, then it allows me to navigate to the database, which is in SysCAD 92 base files, and there it is, default 92 MDB. If I open that, and in your filter at the bottom here, you can type in the name of the species that you want. In our case, we want calcium sulfate solid, so there it is there. If I tick on that, then I can import it. The species that have the NA against them, that means that these species are already in our database, so we can't import them a second time. If I tick on that, I can click Import, and that species will now be in my database. So if I turn on the filter here and I say Start, and I go and I type CAS, and autocomplete CAS04, that is the one that I've just imported. And you can see as a reference it's saying it came in from the HSC database. So it's really quite simple to import a species. The second thing we'll do is we will add a new species, and we'll actually go and fill in all of the fields. So the species that we want to fill in is carbon monoxide with the data as shown here. So this data is all in the SysCAD tutorial for you to go and look at for reference. Okay, so if I come back into my database and I want to add a new species, I can go down to this new button down here. So if I click on that, then it opens up a whole new table for me to type in. So I'll start here with the name. So the required name is carbon monoxide. I'll type that in. And the compound, so this is the short name, is just CO. The definition, and this is how many moles of each element is in that species. So in our case, we've got 1 carbon and 1 oxygen. And you may only have each element once. In our case, we look at the phase occurrence. This is a gas with an individual phase also of gas. The density, if I click on the little blue question mark there, I can see all the different types of equations I can use. I want to use ideal gas density. So I'll type that in. If this was a solid, you would probably just type in the actual density of the solid. The heat of formation of the species in joules per mole is minus 11,054.1.28. The entropy, 197.661. And then the CP. So to see the types of CP equations, again, if we click on the little blue question mark, we'll get the whole list of the different sorts of equations we can use. In our case, we want to use this HSC CP. So if I click there, that gives me the form of that equation. And I just have to go and fill in the values for A, B, C, and D. So the A value, if I delete A, it's actually 25.694. My B value is 8.293. The C value, 1.109. And the last value, the D value, is minus 1.477. The range that this equation is valid for in degrees Celsius, so I can delete Kelvin and Fahrenheit. It's valid from the low temperature of 0 degrees Celsius to a high temperature of 2727. Okay, so that's our CP data. You'll see the solution data, the dissociation, boiling point elevation, they're all grayed out because those are only valid for liquid species. But here we come down to vapor properties. So we can have our vapor pressure property, and again we click on the little blue question mark, and this time we want to use the VP Antoine equation. So that's the equation we'll be adding in. So if we get rid of the A value, and that's 14.3686. The B value is 530.22. And the C value is minus 13.15. So those are the A, B, and C, and then the minimum temperature for this is 63, and the maximum temperature is 108. Our critical pressure, 3.5 megapascals, critical temperature, 132.9. Our vapor is 0.093, and the last one, the acentric factor, is 0.049. We could put our reference where we got this data from, and then whether you want to check it. Most of this data came from the HSC database. And when you're finished, you click on the Update button, and that's now added that species to the database. And in our next section, we'll have a look at how do we add species into the configuration file.